and then to sociology, and then education, psychology, brought this important concept which is also very useful for our professions, and it's intersectionality. Do you know what these terms mean? Have you heard about it before? No? Okay, no worries. Intersectionality shows the interconnected nature of identity. It postulates the different layers that there are when it comes to identity, right? Like, for example, the layer of ethnicity, class, gender, right? And it shows also the overlapping nature of this of identity, and all these overlappings, all these layers can give us a different perspective on identity in terms of discrimination and privilege that we may carry with us. And all of us have experienced privileges and discriminations in their lives, right? Sometimes you think that that a certain colleague or a certain client or whoever you want is privileged, right? Because of what it may look from the outside. But if you go deeper, you will discover new elements and new perspectives on identity. And I would like you. Yes.
Similar as cultural identity.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's something that I brought into my field, because it's, yeah, you're right. This makes it clearer, I think. And this is called the wheel of power privilege. But it is quite clarifying as an image, because here you can see power, and then you can position yourself depending on different aspects, right? Let's make an example. I'm white, right? And therefore, as you know, and unfortunately in the world we live on, being white means having lots of privileges, right? You have to be aware. As a white woman, I have to be aware of all the privileges that we have in this society. So I'm closer to power. But, for example, if I pick housing, I rented an apartment, so I don't have a property, right? And so if I have a lot of power because I'm white, not having a house, balance a little bit my power. You can choose whatever you want. You can see, for example, well, if you speak English, especially again nowadays in the world we live in, where unfortunately, or luckily, I don't know, but I would say unfortunately, English is the common language, right? It means having power, right? If you have neurodivergence, right? If you have a depression, for example, even though if you have a property, even though if you speak English, or if you are a man, for example, right? It could be a lot of power, but again, balanced by the fact that you have some mental health issues, right? And it's really interesting when you complete this wheel to see the final picture, the final image that you have about the person, right? Because someone that you don't expect to have discriminations, in reality may experience a lot of discriminations in their life, depending on where they position themselves, right? Right. And so, since I'm in India, you have a good, representative of India here, like the Nobel Prize, Amartya Sen. And look, an economist that wrote this, and I think it is quite relevant for what we are talking about. Look, The solitarist approach can be a good way to misinterpret any inhabitant of the planet. We consider ourselves members of several groups in our daily lives, the cultural systems that I was referring about before. And we are part of all these groups, and the same person can be, without contradiction, of American citizenship, Caribbean descent, Christian, progressive, woman, vegetarian, marathon runner, feminist, theater lover, and deeply convinced, Indian, and other categories that people may find are, not related, right? As you can see here, we have a lot of characteristics, right? You can be Christian, you can also believe that there are aliens, right? As he said, whatever forms your identity. So we are not like the flag bearer of our country, right? We are much more than this.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Okay. This is also interesting, I think, if you work in counseling and also for psychotherapists and educators as well. Is the concept of sensitive areas. It comes from this amazing scholar. Check it out. Elisabeth Cohen-Emerick. She's French. Maybe you know her? Yeah, good. And she talked a lot about the concept of sensitive areas. Sensitive areas are those zones, those areas that when they are solicited by some encounters, right? When we meet people who are different, very different sometimes from us, this, sensitive areas can be stimulated in a way, right? And the problem is that very often when these areas are stimulated, they can create a deep state of discomfort in us, and they push us to be pervaded by our emotions. And we know from the neuroscience that the emotions are the ones that control the brain, and not vice versa, which is a Copernican revolution, because it means that we have to be very aware and careful on the way we conceive emotions in our daily lives, right? Because they actually control ourselves. So if you are not really aware of what you are feeling, or if you do not know how to manage your emotions, can be a problem, right? And we have different types of sensitive areas. For example, I'm going to share one of mine. I think you have already understood. What is it? Time. Time is a sensitive area, right? Because I'm so really into the precision because of my biographical history, right? I was taught to be on time, to be precise. The time for me is a sensitive area, and this is what happened when I was in Brazil. I got frustrated, I was annoyed by the Brazilians' behavior, right? And this is because time is a sensitive area for myself, but you may have other sensitive areas, right? Like the different conceptions of body, sociality, religion, the representation of the families, members, roles, and rules, leadership, right? The attitudes toward schoolings, towards mental health, whatever, right? And how can we identify sensitive areas? We have to do a big work on ourselves in terms of awareness and consciousness, and we can do it through decentralization, being able to decentralize ourselves and to empathize. Otherwise, it's not possible at all. So it's a huge work, again, on ourselves. And in fact, when I finish my course, I have a very long course with my students on intercultural education at the University of Verona. We spend more than 60 hours together in a semester. And at the end of my course, I ask my students to give me, in a couple of words, what they keep with themselves about what they have learned. And I'm always like this, fingers crossed. Like, let's see what they say. But every time they say, let's say, the right things, because they say, Mom, what we have understood, what we have learned is that the problem, which is not the problem, let's say the challenge, is ourselves. It's not the others. It's the way, right? We are not able sometimes to deeply understand ourselves, why this person is bothering us, right? In fact, it's for some at times, or why we feel we have good emotions when we meet a person rather than another, right? It's important to realize and to gain awareness on what we feel, on what our sensitive areas are, especially when we deal with differences, right? Especially when there are huge differences in terms of values, right? Also because we cannot just put barriers, especially if you work in social fields, you have to be able to cope with these, feelings, sometimes very challenging feelings, right? Especially when we feel, oh, I don't want to, to have this person working with me. I don't feel comfortable with her in this room. These sort of things, right? And that's why interculturality is not being able to, to change maybe the others, right? But it's more about how we learn to negotiate and mediate with the differences, right? And try to find out brand new solutions to go through the differences, right? Rather than other solutions that might not go in the direction of inclusion, of well-being, and respect, right? Even though this is something that I haven't said yet, and it is important, intercultural approach doesn't only mean respect. Of course you have to respect, right? Also because we are all human beings and we have to respect the human dignity. And that's a rule, right? You cannot violate this rule. But we have to be very careful to not fall into moral relativism where anything goes, right? We have the duty to stand up and to say whether we want to change something that doesn't really work, or if something goes against the basic human rights. So let's make an example. If a person believes that, I don't know, child labor or infibulation is something good, it's something that has to be accepted because it's part of the culture, well, I'm not really sure if I have to really accept and respect this kind of practice. I'm not talking about people. Of course I have to respect all the people, but when it comes to practices, cultural practices, there is always possibility to change, right? Because we said the culture can change. There is nothing which is fixed, right? So it is very challenging, of course, because it means that you have to be able to negotiate and dialogue and to interact, and also to try to change the other's point of view. It's a very mutual, I would say, process, right? And you don't really know how it will end up, right? Maybe you just respect each other and you stay apart. Maybe you can transform the reality and try to figure it out how to create something new, right? It's really fascinating, but at the same time very difficult. But there is possibility. Yeah, I don't know if I was enough clear, or maybe there is the need to translate.
I guess everyone is understanding very good.
कहीं कोई दिक्कत है क्या? नहीं बताओ, मैं समझ रहा हूँ कि बहुत ठीक ठाक चल रहा है. चल, please carry on.
Everyone, if you're understanding, just give a thumbs up.
Good. Good. Now, well, I promise that I will stop soon to talk. Otherwise, I'm going to become very boring. But I think at the same time that it's important to have a common theoretical background on what we are talking about, right? Good. So what's the problem? How do we function as human beings? We function like this, unfortunately, especially if we don't have awareness. We tend to identify just, a few elements of the culture, and we interpret the person primarily on its basis. And a typical example is that when there is like a tough situation, we say, I know why this person is acting like this, because she's the typical feminist, right? She's the typical vegetarian. Whatever you want to add, right? It's something that it's easy. We categorize, right? Because it's easy. I have the mental shortcuts. I have the term now. It comes, it came. Yes. We then tend to interpret the others and their culture from our cultural lens, right? From our filter, because it's the easiest way to perceive, right? We have these glasses, we wear them, and this is the lens through which we see the world. But it's not, right?
It's the major barrier.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And then we tend to forget that we have to be focused on the person. And the person is not a representative of a culture, of a nation, of whatever you want. It's just the uniqueness of a person, right? And so recognizing our sensitive areas, those areas, those zones, when they are scratched, they make us feel very uncomfortable with the others, right? And I think you all had some glimpse, right, on examples on daily basis, right? It happens to me, I think, a couple of times per day to have my sensitive areas like will allow us to be aware of our also prejudice and stereotypes and categorization processes. I go very quickly about this because I think you are all familiar already, right?
Everyone knows what is categorization, right? जब हम किसी को अलग-अलग श्रेणी में बांट देते हैं.
Yeah. But what is important to stress when it comes to categorization is that it's like a double-faced concept, because if it is negative in a way, because it relies upon categories, right? And we are not representatives of categories. At the same time, since the world, the reality is so complex that we need to categorize. Otherwise, we cannot navigate through the complexity, right? They are these mental shortcuts that help us to decide, because sometimes we have to decide in a very quick way where to go. This road or this road? This road, I know that there are a lot of traffic jam, there are, this road might, and so you decide, there you go. Because you don't have time to analyze all the variables and factors impacting a reality or a person, right?
In fact, your aims and objective and approaches categorize yourself to where you have to move.
Right.
कहाँ जाना है? Okay, sorry.
Right. So, and we also know that stereotype, what is it, right? It's nice because it's I don't know if you know where it derives. It derives from the Greek words stereos, which means rigid, and topos, which means imprint. It was used for the very first time in 1922 by Walter Lippmann in the context of communication studies, right? And they are mental shortcuts for understanding the complexity, and stereotypes are shared by the group that they have produced it.